What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Optimize You podcast. In today's episode, we're covering the second part. So, part two of how effective goal setting can actually help you keep your results this time. Let's get into it. What's up, everybody? So, we are going over part two today of a two-part series on effective goal setting. How can you effectively set your goals so they actually stick, so you actually keep the results this time? That's what we're talking about. Not just goal setting. Anybody can set goals, but how can you do so effectively? And the steps that we're talking about today are steps that I've personally and have included and suggested to my clients that drastically, when implemented, drastically improve percentages to reaching my goals and their goals. Anytime I've failed to do these parts, it's extremely difficult. You can see how easy it is to give up. Maybe you get the result, but your ability to keep it is very minimal unless you implement these things we're about to talk about right now. So if you missed part one is going over establishing and setting goals that mean something. What do I mean by that? If you haven't watched it, go back to part one. Part one is talking about true wants and desires when you're establishing and setting a goal. Write it down. Write it down because it gives you a couple different opportunities. It makes a brain connection that is extremely powerful, that kind of goes unwritten here, or excuse me, that kind of flies under the radar, but it does something to our brain that makes it tangible. The other thing that you can do is I want you to take this mindset and this approach is if you're somebody who's set goals before, but you've set average goals or surface level goals in fear of what others may think, or they may judge you or their opinion, or you feel like you're not capable. So you just kind of put something down. The reason I want you to write it down and the reason why it's so much more effective is I want you to take the approach of once you write the goal down, you can wrinkle it up and you can burn it so nobody would see it. So that should eliminate all judgment. So now you can dump everything that you truly actually want and desire on that piece of paper and make it real, make it tangible for yourself, make it sticky to go even deeper to another level. And I'm just kind of reiterating what video one was about. You are going to chunk down and ask yourself why until you get to the core reason. So if your goal that you put on there is 20 pounds, chunk it down. Ask, why do you want to lose 20 pounds? Well, I want to have a little bit more energy. Why do you want to have more energy? Well, so I can play with my kids for longer than 5 minutes and not get exhausted. Okay, why is that important to you? Because spending time with my kids is above everything else. Okay, great. Like, keep chunking it down and you'll find what that'll give you when you achieve the goal, and you'll be able to feel it. You'll be able to understand exactly what you want. It's no longer just losing 20 pounds. It's no longer just regaining your health back. It's no longer just cutting sugar out. Like those are the tip of the iceberg goals that if they don't have any substance or stickiness to them, the ability for you to keep them, not only get there, but then keep and sustain the result is so minimal because it doesn't really mean anything to you. It's a goal out of convenience. So if you're somebody who wants to ditch that and you're like, I actually want to commit this time, no ifs, ands, or buts. I know I'm capable of more. I need to draw a line in the sand and do this and make a decision for myself. Follow these steps. If that's not you, you can go away from this video right now. I'm not talking to you. You can keep doing whatever you're doing. Now, once you're in a position to be able to have your goal written down, now it's time to take action. So you're like, what do I do next? This is part two. The first step of part two, once you've established your true want and your true desire, is you have to understand the flow. If you guys have read Atomic Habits, this is a beautiful example of how in the order in which you should do your goal setting and your goal work and your work towards your goal. It's a phenomenal process. And when done incorrectly, when done in the wrong order, the percentages of you achieving the goal and sustaining it drastically drop. Okay, so let's talk about it. I have my goal. Let's use a hypothetical. Let's just say my goal is I want to become better health because I want to be a walking example for all of my loved ones. I want to be the hero in their life, and I want to be the person they look to for inspiration, to give them hope that they can do it too. Okay, so that's deeper than just I want better health, right? Like, I want people to be able to look at me as an inspiration and be like, because of Matt, I was able to achieve XYZ. Because of Matt, I was inspired to get started. Because of He showed me and guided me through the way to be able to change my life so that I can become better and live optimally. Those are the things that are important to me, right? So let's just use that for an example. Now, once I have the outcome, that's my outcome, right? That's my goal. That's established. I almost have to forget about that part. I know it sounds kind of crazy, but I have to forget about that part. And the reason why is because if I'm not in those shoes yet, right? If this is a far-fetched goal, something that feels like it's way out in front of me, I have to, once the outcome's established, I have to go to the center, to my core, and become the person that is capable of doing those things. I have to feel it. I go, okay, ask myself, if I'm working towards that person, how can I shift my identity to become as much of that person as I possibly can? And it's not going to happen all at once, but what are some of the characteristics that that version of me has that I want to adopt, that I'm willing to commit to and I can adopt today? And slowly but gradually, this whole process, if you guys can't tell yet, this whole process and the magic is in the becoming part, right? It's not like, oh man, I'm going to check the boxes a couple times. I'm going to not drink alcohol for a couple days. I'm going to not do sugar for a little bit. And I'm just going to check the box. And then hopefully, fingers crossed, I get to where I want to go. And then all of a sudden I don't do it anymore. This whole process is in the actual becoming part. So once I have my outcome established, I have to go to my core and go, man, I actually have to become the person that's capable of doing that outcome, right? So for me, it's like, I have to be able to be in top physical health and shape physically. And I have to, my characters, right? My characteristics, how I treat people, how I talk to people has to be at an infectious state to the point where people are inspired by it, right? I have to deliver as much value as I possibly can because that's what I feel like I was sent here to do. And so I have to adopt those characteristics. How does that person act? What do they do on a day-to-day basis when they're faced with this challenge that I'm facing today? How did they work through it? Right? You got to ask yourself those questions. That's part of the identity shift. That's part of, I am now that person, as sloppily as I may be, right? In the process, I'm becoming that person. And so in an attempt to become that person, I have to adopt their characteristics. I have to keep asking myself in the process when I come to a roadblock, I am that person already now. It's just time hasn't caught up yet. And I have to truly believe that. And when I do that, I don't just check the boxes anymore, right? I don't just do the workouts anymore. I don't just eat the healthy food anymore. I am that person. And when you can make that shift, it's a subtle shift, but when you do it and you can shift the lens that you're viewing your process through and actually become that version of you mentally, like see yourself as it. Even if you're super obese right now and your goal is to like be super shredded, like it's like drastic, right? Let's say you have a super deep desire. Why? As difficult and as hard as it may seem, you have to shift your identity that you are becoming that person. Even take yourself to extremes and go, I am that person, just time hasn't caught up yet. And when you can do that and you actually can feel like you're a part of that outcome, you can feel like you're well on your way, things will change for you. But if all you're looking at is the distance between where you're currently at and that outcome that you first established, remember I said once the outcome's established, you got to forget about it. Okay, it's just sit there. Now we have to chunk backwards and go, okay, what are the first steps that I need to do? What did that version of me to be able to achieve that goal? What were some of the first things that they did? And that's where I start, right? They say it all the time, that the small wins, the gold is in the small wins. Well, everybody's looking for a silver bullet. We're looking for 100 gold BBs in the day, right? The little small wins. And it's the boring stuff. It truly is. It truly is the boring stuff. But people try to skip the boring stuff because they want the outcome now. All of a sudden, they look around and like, I'm not there yet. Let me try something different. And they go face the same bottleneck over and over and over. They slide down that slippery slope. Okay, so once I establish the outcome, I have to backtrack, go inside and go, okay, I have to identify as that person, as that version of me. And I have to make sure that I can truly feel it and I can believe it. I know it sounds stupid, but if you can do it, I promise you, you will make the decisions necessary on a day-to-day that bridge the gap and allow you to become closer and closer and closer, which then brings us to our next step, which is the process, right? So we have our outcome. I had to backtrack all the way and go inside and go, okay, I need to shift my identity to become that person and adopt those characteristics to be able to absorb that and achieve that and truly believe in that. Okay, now what's the process? Well, all we do is chunk it backwards. Right? If I see the version of me, and let's look 5, 10 years down the road, you can even look 12 months down the road, right? It doesn't matter. I'm going to chunk backwards and go, okay, I can visualize that version of me. What does he do on a day-to-day basis? Okay, cool. He works out 5 days a week, 5 to 6 days a week. Okay, what am I doing now? I'm doing 4. Okay, so what I can do now is I can increase by 1, right? I'm going to increase. I'm not going to go straight. I'm not going to jump from 4 straight to 6. What's the first step that I could take that's right there in front of me that almost seems too easy? You want your first steps to be, you're like, I could do that. I could do that in my sleep. Like I actually already do that sometimes. That's a great first step. That's part of your process. Okay. Because we want it to stick. We want you to feel confident in your first steps. Because if you feel confident in your first steps, that means you can actually do it and that'll get you going. The hardest part is to get the ball rolling. Okay. So I've identified as myself as somebody who's already there. I'm becoming that person. I'm in the process now. And what's my first step? Cool. I need to add one workout, just one workout to my week right now. Okay. The next thing is, okay, I need to take my diet and my nutrition. I'm using me for an example, right? I need to take my diet and nutrition from an 80-20 approach to about an 85 approach. Okay. So I need to increase the quality of my food just a little bit more, not from 80% up to 100, but just a little bit. So I can show myself and prove to myself that I'm consistent in my process. And all I'm doing is just chunking backwards to figure out what are the first steps? What's the low-hanging fruit? What's the thing I can grab first that I feel really confident in my process? And it's actually going to build momentum for me so that I'm like, okay, what's next? I'm not trying to do everything at once. This is what you see on January 1st. People are going cold turkey, right? They're stopping alcohol. They're cutting out sugar. They're going keto. They're eliminating carbs. Like they're doing crazy shit. And it's no wonder it's so drastically different than where they're currently at that their ability to sustain those things is minimal. Let's say they grit and they grind and they gut through it and they actually get to where they want to go. What do you think the chances of them keeping that? Because it's so drastically different. They went from 0 to 100. How do you think they're going to keep that? How do you think they're going to sustain those results? You might even be that person. You might have done it. You might have tried it before. All right. I can almost guarantee that you're like, man, yep, he's right. I wasn't able to keep those results. So we have the outcome. Once you establish the outcome, that deep emotional desire and want, detach from it, right? You got to detach from it. You have to go, okay, now let me go inside and become that person who actually can attain those things. Who is that person, right? I am that person. It's not like I think I'm that person and I'm going to try. No. You have to have ultimate conviction. It's like an obsessive belief in self. And how do you do that? You stick to the little small wins in the process that we were just talking about. For me, it was adding one workout, right? For you, it might be like, let's say if you're like, man, I eat sugar 7 days a week. Cool. What are you willing to commit to? Is it 5 days a week? Are you willing to go from 7 down to 5? Because that's going to get you one step closer. You start with that. What's your low hanging fruit that gets you started? And that's going to give you momentum, right? Again, it's going to give you momentum. And then you can compound and stack on top. So what happens is if you solely focus on the outcome and you try to get there as fast as you possibly can and you skip steps, you do things in an unsustainable way, you may get there, but your ability to effectively maintain and keep those goals, your percentages drastically drop. It's a percentages game, right? There's no binary thinking in this. There's no like all or nothing, right? It's to what degree are you going to be able to keep that result that you worked so hard to get to, that you white knuckled and grit and grinded through. What's your ability to keep that? So keep that in mind. Boom, I've established my outcome. Okay, now detach from it. Who am I? Who can I become to be able to achieve that? Let me step in their shoes today. Let me make my decision and my thought process as if I'm that person. I am that person. And that's going to help me make the decision so much easier. It's going to help me filter out other people's opinions. It's going to help me filter out any doubts and fears. Not to say those things aren't going to be prevalent, but you're going to be able to make a decision much easier than if you're getting distractions from other people. If you have this surface level goal, if you haven't switched your identity to actually becoming that person, and then you haven't chunked your goal back to go, okay, what's the first step? What's the stepping stone right in front of me? Let me just focus on that. And once I can nail that consistently, what's the next stepping stone? And you just incrementally in the process, slowly but surely, keep chipping away and be stoked. Find ways to be pumped with the little wins, with the small wins. Because when you do, you create and you build your own momentum so that you can chunk away and not only reach your goal, but you can sustain and keep your goal. You can keep your results. That's what it's about. Okay. So enjoy yourselves in the process. Don't forget about that part. That's a huge part. The actual fun, the actual joy is in the process of becoming, right? We forget about that. We're in such a hurry to get to the outcome, which can be used to your advantage. But most of the time, we're in a hurry to get to the outcome. We start doing some things, we start checking some of the boxes. We look up and we go, oh man, I'm not there yet. I must be doing something wrong. I'm going to give up or I'm going to try something different, right? Versus establish your outcome, deep desire, want, go back, identify as the person who can achieve that deep inside, right? I am that person. I'm adopting those characteristics. It may not be perfect, but I'm becoming that person each and every single day. I'm choosing to look through the lens and the view of that person as if I already have it. And that'll help your decision making along the process. And once you've chunked it back, what's the low hanging fruit? What's the first step in the process to that first stepping stone that you can take? And you start with that. And you continuously build and build and build. And it's going to feel slow. It's going to feel monotonous. It's going to feel boring. But eventually, at some point, you're going to be able to take a step up, look backwards, and realize how far you actually came. And I hope everybody gets to that point. If this was helpful for you, be sure to share it with a friend, a family member, somebody that you know struggles with it and they need a process. They need a structure. They failed time and time again, or they have limiting beliefs, but you know they want to be capable of more and they want more and they feel like they're deserving of more. Share this process with them, give it a try. And I promise you the percentages will drastically increase to you not only getting your goal, but you keeping it. We'll catch you guys on the next one.